Hello, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the panel discussion entitled, What Does Inclusion Have to Do with Me? Tonight, our panelists are going to do their best to answer that question. We chose this Motzi Shabbos because this February is Jewish Disability Inclusion Awareness Month, so we felt it apropos. And we're happy to be here in Makor, this big, beautiful venue. Thank you for having us. And in that vein, we're going to have Rabbi Schechter give a brief greeting. So please, everyone, welcome him.
Good Tabach to everybody. It's a tremendous honor for Makor Chaim to host this incredible event and these incredible presenters tonight from the Friendship Circle, from Keshet, Libenu, Reach, Yahalom. These organizations are literally the treasure of Klal Yisrael and the treasure of the Jewish nation. I could not be more proud to host an event for inclusion in our shul and in our social hall. It's just a tremendous honor, and I'm humbled to sit up here with people who are on a panel for inclusion, people who do so much for our community. It's just a tremendous kavod, doing the greatest work on earth. So the Medrash says, when it talks about special needs, and obviously there are every different level of special needs, but the way I understand it is that it's all families that people with different levels, varying levels of disability that need a little bit of extra help. So I'll just keep it to families or children with disabilities. So the Medrash has a take on inclusion and on family members with disabilities. And the Medrash says as follows. The Medrash is it comes from the rabbis from the same time as the Mishnah and the Gemara. But sometimes the Medrash will say a story, or will say an idea with a parable, with a mashal. So the Medrash says as follows. There was a king, and the king had 5 sons. And the king decided that he must go far away to a faraway land to do whatever kings do in a faraway land. And so before he left, he called in each of his children individually, and he told to them, I'll be gone for a while, I don't know how long. Please take care of the kingdom, take care of each other, and don't worry, here's a key to my private bank, to my private storehouse. There's gold there, there's silver, there's royal material. Take care of yourself, and treat yourself the way princes should treat themselves, and do a great job. And he called in each of his children. However, he didn't call in one child. He just called him in to say goodbye. That was it. He did not give him a key. And the king left. Anyways, comes a couple days, and all the family members, all the children, they need to buy stuff. Of course, they have a key to the vault, to the safe, to the king's treasures. They go, they take out some gold, some silver, garments. They're all eating well, looking great. One son has no key. So he goes to his brother, and he says, my dear brother, you're looking really great, and you look well fed. I'm kind of hungry. And he says to him, well, what's the problem? Just go to the vault. He says, but I don't have a key. He goes, Father didn't give you a key? And he says, no. Why? He gave you a key? He says, oh yeah, sure. He gave me a key, of course. He says, oh, okay, so you have the key. Please open up the vault for me. He said, 1 second. Why didn't Father give you a key? Must be he doesn't want you to have access to the vault. I'm sorry. I can't go against Father's wishes. and he didn't give him the key. And this repeated itself with each brother. And unfortunately, there was no keyless entry. And that was it. He had to fend for himself. And after a while, he had to beg for food. And his clothing became worn. And the longer it went, torn, tattered. And he literally became a beggar with nothing. And the other brothers were running the kingdom, and everything was doing great for them. They were looking like princes should look. They were well fed, well vacationed. Anyways, they get a few years later, they get a message. The king is returning. And they're all excited. And they decorate the entire palace the way a royal welcome back for the king is decorated, and all the sons dress their finest. And they're all online over there, and they're waiting to greet the king. One brother, he's so excited his father's coming back. He's going to get his food. He's going to get his royal food and his royal clothing. And he's there with his tattered garments, and his face is gaunt, and he looks malnourished. And the king comes in, and the ceremony goes on. And the king is hugging all his children. And he gets to his son, who's tattered and gaunt, and he says to him, "What has happened to you, my son?" And he says, "What has happened to me? You didn't give me a key." And he said, "But I gave your brothers a key." And he said, "Yeah, that's the point. You gave my brothers a key." He says, "And they didn't take care of you?" And he said, "No. They all said, 'You didn't give me a key. Must be you don't want me to have a key.'" And he called his sons into a meeting immediately. And he said to his sons, "You know me forever. Would I ever abandon one of my children? Would I ever not give him a key? The reason why I didn't give him a key is because I wanted to teach you brothers how to look out for your brother, how to take care of your brother. And why did I choose him? I chose him because he's such a special neshama that I knew he's the only one that could handle coming on to his brothers and maybe understanding after a while that Father wanted me to teach his brothers a lesson to look out for their brother. How can you do this to him? He's my prize son." And the king said, "You're all princes, but he is going to take my place one day. He will be the future king." Says the Medrash, what is this parable? Hashem, the most benevolent king, sends us to the world, and each one of us has a key. We have a key to be self-sufficient. We have a key to pursue our goals, and we have abilities. But then he takes precious neshamas, and he sends them to the world, and he doesn't give them every key, and he doesn't give them every ability to be self-sufficient. But he expects us to give them the key, or to open up the vault for them, to dress them in royal clothing, to feed them royally. That's why certain children he didn't give a key to. He takes the most special neshamas who he feels could handle this type of a life, and he puts them down here, and they're among us, that we should give them the key and that we should take care of them. Of course, the families with special needs children, they're beyond amazing. They're beyond amazing. But as everybody knows, these are Klal Yisrael's kids. No family is capable of doing this on their own. And even if they tell you that Hashem never gives you a nisayon that you can't handle, it means He never gives you something that you can't handle with the rest of Klal Yisrael. But without the rest of Klal Yisrael, and without the rest of people who are looking out for inclusion, not just amongst Jews, but amongst the whole world, there's no way that we can do this. It's for us to provide the key. It's for us to provide the key. And with that, when Mashiach comes, we will see that these neshamas were the most special neshamas. And they will be our leaders. They will be our leaders. But we'll be able to stand up and to say that we did enable them. But it's only because of these organizations. Only because of the Friendship Circle, Keshet, Yachad, Libenu, Reach, Yahalom. Only because of them. I don't think that the rest of us are doing enough, but of course we're all doing in different ways. But it's thanks to these organizations that Hashem will be proud of all of us. And because they taught us how to do inclusion and how to give the key and how to treat these special neshamas like royalty, dress them royal, feed them royally, give them the same opportunities that we all have. So we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude. You should continue doing your amazing work, and we're honored to stand amongst you. Good to Bach.
Thank you, Rabbi Schechter, for that poignant introduction. What a powerful beginning to tonight. I'm going to give you a brief overview of how tonight is going to work, and then we're going to get started. So tonight is meant to be an approachable and accessible, a casual conversation about how to create a more inclusive community and how our individual choices can make that happen. We know that a lot of times people don't ask questions because they're afraid of offending someone, they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. So tonight is your chance to ask questions. So how it's going to work is our panelists are going to introduce themselves. They're just going to quickly say their name, what organization they're from, what their organization does. And then each panelist has a topic that they are going to be addressing. So they'll tell you what that is, and it plays into their strengths about their knowledge and how they serve the community. Then we're going to answer the questions that were submitted during the RSVPs, and then we'll open it up to live questions from the audience. And you can ask a specific panelist a question, or you can ask a general question, and whoever wants to chime in can answer. So I will kick off the introductions. My name is Mandy Hakimi. I'm here with Friendship Circle, and I'm going to be moderating. And, oh, thank you. And we're going to start with Rabbi Zelik.
Firstly, good Shavua Tov, good Tvach. Thank you to Rabbi Schechter. Classrooms upstairs. We know it's a big deal, and we appreciate it. So, just a brief introduction. Friendship Circle aims to provide social activities and educational activities for children and adults with special needs, primarily focusing on friendships and things that interactions between children with special needs and their typical developing peers.
Hi, I'm Fiona Clark. Good Vach. First of all, thank you to Friendship Circle for bringing us all together. And I've had personal experience with most of these organizations here, and it's very meaningful to be with them tonight. I'm the director of Yahalom Chicago, and Yahalom Chicago is a division of Agudas Israel of Illinois. There's a Yahalom in New York and a Yahalom in New Jersey as well. We're a resource navigation guide for families who have children with special needs. So basically our goal is to be an address for families to go to for guidance as they navigate the special needs journey. They need a lawyer if they need to know what to do when their child turns 18, how to get funding from the state of Illinois, and a lot of other things. So the way we do this is with a lot of research and networking on our part, but the main thing, the most valuable sources of resources are those families who have children with special needs kids. Some of them are here right now because they have had firsthand experience going through the successes. And in this way, our hope is that families do not have to reinvent the wheel, and they can access these resources with much more ease.
Hi, I'm Dina Baker. I'm from Libenu. We provide housing, residential, and we provide respite. Some of our respite parents are here. And we also provide overnight respite, which we began a year ago for Shabbos, 2 to 3 times a month.
Hi, I'm Jen Phillips. I'm the CEO of Keshet. Keshet provides services for individuals with disabilities from the age to now forever. Our 4 core areas are our education, camp and rec, adult day program with vocational resources, and then now residential. And we really are creating a community of belonging where people with disabilities can learn, play, live, work, and grow with people of all abilities.
Hi. Does this work? I'm Debbie Harris, and I'm from Yachad. Yachad is a social rec organization, and we strictly work on socializing and having people go out there and meet other people and belong in the community with people with disabilities and without people with disabilities, and give everybody a place to be.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Bassman. I'm a mom of a child with disabilities. My daughter Sarah is 22. She's my oldest. It's my introduction to parenthood. And I'm very grateful to all these organizations up here for all that they have done for our family.
Hi, my name is Rosi Sukanik. I'm Director of Student Services for REACH. REACH supports all schools that are Federation beneficiaries. Our mission is to increase internal capacity of the school so that they can meet the needs of all their students. Our ultimate goal is that we service schools that are beneficiaries of the Federation, and we provide a range of support which is tailored to each school, focusing on direct services, consultation, and professional development. Our current focus is on students whose primary challenge is with academic issues.
Okay, I'm going to introduce each topic, and we're going to get started. So Rabbi Moskowitz from Friendship Circle is going to be talking about, or answering the question, I should say. They're all phrased as a question. How do we move away from don't stare with appropriate methods of engagement when encountering visible disability?
Thank you, Mandy, and thank you everyone for being here. In society, hopefully present company excluded, but in society at large, we typically view other people with a certain lens, and materialism in our world plays a very big factor. And depending on what house I have, what car I drive, the clothing that I wear, that puts me in a certain social category. And I choose my friends based on my category. I'm not promoting this, but I'm just explaining what the situation on the ground is. And in many cases, people will view other people through this lens. And as Yidden, as the Jewish people, we understand that that's not the ultimate definition or lens that we should use when choosing friends or hanging out with people. We obviously understand that every person has an neshama, has a soul, and the soul that we possess, our neshama, is the same as our neighbor and as our friend and everyone in our shul and everyone in the other shul that we don't go to. We all have the same neshama, we all have part of Hashem. And if we could take away those layers that society has given us, or those layers that we sometimes put on society, or the those dynamics, if we could strip that away, then we could focus on the neshama, what's really important and what really unites us. And when we have that attitude and we're able to put on those glasses that the person is standing right in front of us or sitting next to us in the restaurant is not someone different, but someone part of us, because we all have this, we all share the same chelik elikam imal mamash, the same neshama, and therefore he or she is my brother or sister. So when we have that lens, we have that outlook, then we could communicate in a much healthier, in a much more productive way. So just like my brother or my sister may have a certain strength in a certain aspect that I don't have. And I may have a strength that they don't have. I don't berate them for that. We try to sit down and see what can we do, how can we, what is it that I can offer to him or her, and just being together is what is our goal, is our prized possession. So the problem that used to be more prevalent in society of people saying don't steer, which obviously what every human being craves is connection, is attachment. So when we see someone who might look different than us, let's say we understand already that we're equals and we're all part of the same family and we all have the same neshama, we're all created by God equally. The person standing in front of us or the person that we're interacting with wants that same connection, and I'm sure we'll hear this more than once tonight. We're not trying to hide something or be ashamed of something, but rather people want this attachment and want this closeness and feel that it's important to ask, what is it that I can do to make your life easier, or how would you like me to address this issue, or how would you like me to react in this situation? And by asking those questions of what can I do, first of all, I hope that it puts the other person at ease, and it opens up the dialogue not to shy away from it, but to engage and create those connections.
Okay, we're going to keep the conversation moving with Debbie from Yachad. She's going to be answering the question, how can we teach kids to be inclusive from a young age socially? Play dates, birthday parties, Shabbos meals, etc.
So I have to say, I feel like a lot of us are going to be redundant and say a lot of the same things. But I'm so curious to know who's here. So can I do this? So if you're a parent, will you raise your hand? And of somebody with a disability. I'm sorry. Thank you. And if you're here because you're a community member and you want to learn, beautiful. And if you are a professional in the field and you want to see what this is all about. Did I miss anybody? Thank you. Or a person with a disability that wants to hear what we have to say. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. It's helpful to know who's here. So 1 in 5 people have a disability, whatever it is, if it's a learning disability, an intellectual disability, mental health, physical, sensory. So a lot of people that we engage with on a day-to-day basis all the time, everywhere, has a disability. We don't always know it. I think the same thing that the rabbi said is we all have the same stuff. We're all the same people. We all want the same things. So when we talk about play, we talk about play dates, we talk about Shabbat and belonging and inclusion. We all want to be included. I have a story to tell you that I talk about all the time wherever I go. This is one of my favorite stories. And there's a friend of mine who I call a friend was dating somebody and getting to know this person, and when he was getting to know the person he was dating, he said, tell me a little bit about yourself, as we all do, right? When we're friends, we want to get to know each other, and they're dating, they want to get to know each other. So he said, tell me a little bit about yourself. And to the woman he was dating, she said, I have Down syndrome. And the young man said, oh my gosh, so do I. And they, if you know some characteristics, you look at somebody with Down syndrome and typically you can see it, right? I mean, there's some characteristics that stand out. So when we talk about not staring and what people look like, they didn't even see that in each other because they just saw that they were people that wanted the same thing, that wanted to get to know each other. So when we talk about including people and belonging, everybody wants the same. It doesn't matter. So how do you do it? You do it like you do it with anybody else. Kids need some support. Things, if the typically if you have a little kid, right, you have a little kid and you're setting up play dates for your kid, you're going to do the same thing with the kid with a disability. It might be a little uncomfortable. It might be hard for, a parent. They might not know what to expect. Just ask questions and just share. And I say parents are everyone's best advocate. Parents know their kids the best, right? So nothing's off the table. If you don't ask, you don't know, you don't learn. So ask how to do it, but include people. At the Shabbos table, it's so easy. You're having a meal. People, we surround ourselves with food. Look at all of this food. Everywhere we go, there's food, right? So that's a common denominator. Again, I would just say that we all have the same stuff. We're all the same people, and we all want the same thing. And ask questions. Outside of the school day, it's not so hard. People want to be included. Not all the time, and it might look different, right? I mean, if we're playing with Legos, my Legos might look different than your Legos, but we can still do the same things. And be a role model for your children, right? If you're inclusive and you treat people like you want to be treated and like people without disabilities, everybody will do the same thing. It's not complicated, and I do think sometimes people are afraid to ask. Sometimes people do stare a little bit too much, and it's really because of ignorance or curiosity, and they don't know how to ask. And so I always say ask, right? Ask. Share, ask people what they need. If you see somebody struggling, if you see somebody that's not included, ask them what they need. Even carpooling, we don't have to have conversations. You can just share space, right? I mean, it looks different for everybody. All of our relationships are different for different people. And just because like I said, my Legos might look different than your Legos, play might look different for each person, and sitting at a table might look different. And just because we're not having a conversation doesn't mean that people shouldn't be included. If people use different ways of communicating, whether they use a communication device, or they use picture symbols, or maybe they sign, or maybe they don't have a way of communicating right now, it doesn't mean that you can't do some parallel play and just share space and be together. Sometimes people need some things, right? I mean, we talk about sensory overload, and we talk about, all kinds of different things that might be aversive to some people. And again, ask questions. Ask questions. People like the same. People gravitate towards each other because they like the same things. And so just because somebody has a disability doesn't mean that they don't want to do something that somebody else does. Everybody wants to be invited to a birthday party. So, I just say do it with everybody. And again, accept the fact that it's going to look a little bit different for some people maybe, and that's okay. The benefits of inclusion are a sense of belonging. And again, that's something that we all want. Acceptance, tolerance, increased empathy, friendship, compassion, increased participation. And if I would ask all of you, what makes your life full, you would all probably say those things too. So we need to model that for our children and support our children that way. Again, treating people, I say that we're all the same. We all have the same stuff. And talking to somebody, not about somebody, not at somebody, not without somebody. So even if it's a child, right? Talk to that child, not about that child, around that child. I think sometimes we forget that when we're trying to be nice and we're trying to include people, but we forget about that person. So include that person in the conversation. And it's easy with little ones. It's harder when people get older, right? When they're little, you don't have to have a conversation. You could be reading a book. You could be playing with Legos. You could be at the playground. It's easier when they're little. And if we start it when kids are little and we model for our children, then it'll happen when they get older, and it'll be natural. And just like the story I told you in the beginning when I started talking, that these two people that are now married and have a beautiful relationship, they didn't see the disability in each other. They just saw the gifts in each other. And I feel like that's our responsibility to do for our children.
Okay, Okay, next is going to be Russi from REACH. She's going to be answering the question, how can we avoid assumptions when encountering invisible disability? I.e., judging behavior when we may not even know that someone has a disability.
As Debbie said, a lot of people have disabilities. We don't know what they are, and I just like to always assume that someone's dealing with something. The best response is always a response of kindness. So when someone is rude or does something unexpected that we don't like, I just like to go someplace in my brain and say, they probably have some kind of perception issue, they don't understand what's going on, something's going on with their attention, they're very agitated because of sensory. We just don't know, but it helps keep the kindness there. I also think that especially when it comes to inclusion, because I'm a teacher, I think the answer to everything is education. So don't hesitate to share with others how to interact well with yourself, with your children, or what's going on. It's always good to have prepared some kind of respectful answer if someone pries in a way that's not respectful of your boundaries, because sometimes that does happen, but that shouldn't get in the way of everybody participating in our community. I believe that God created everybody with a purpose and a benefit to the community. And one of the biggest benefits in inclusion is for everybody to be exposed to all different types of people that were created and learn how to appreciate them. But we need education, especially people who have hidden disabilities sometimes have a hard time processing what they're seeing in front of them. And if you can coach in a kind way how to respond or interact or explain what's going on, again, responding with empathy and kindness, it will go a very long way.
Okay, we've talked a lot about children, but now we're going to hear from Dina at Libenu and answer the question, how can we include adults with disabilities as full-fledged members of our community?
Okay, so Debbie literally took all my ideas. That's okay. And between Debbie and the rabbi. But basically, I was just going to say, just in terms of the adults, is to get to know them beyond their disabilities. So, like I say, our residents, the most amazing thing for them to do is to be invited out for Shabbos lunch. Like Debbie said, food, they love it. They love to be included. They love to go to shul. Our homes are all in the neighborhood where they can walk to shul, walk to someone's house for a meal. They love that. And even the younger kids, like some of the parents that are here now, anything, like for them to go for a walk, take them out in the stroller, or even just for a walk for an hour on Shabbos, means the world to the family, not just the kid. Like they have a little break from their kid to be able to go, and the kid obviously enjoys to be out with everyone. And I don't know who said it also, but obviously we have to make sure that it's accessible, which not everywhere is accessible. And some people, the bright lights or the loud noise is very hard for them. You have to be obviously very in tune to that also. And even if it's not Shabbos, they love, like a lot of them love just to go out, even if it's to 7-Eleven, just to get out and just be like a normal teenage kid or a kid is their favorite thing in the world. So we have 2 men's homes in Chicago. We have 1 women's home in Skokie, and they're invited. I mean, people can be invited out. I can give you my information. You can contact me. They would love that. I don't know where everyone lives, but yeah, they can come, and I'll give you my phone number and my email after, and contact me. I will arrange that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jen, your time has come. We're going to hear from Keshet. We're going to answer the question, what does inclusion in the classroom look like? And how can the average parent help make their child's classroom more inclusive?
So, everyone said so many things we are all thinking. But this is much easier than you think. Building a classroom that is inclusive should be everything that happens every single day in our schools, because all of our children are different, right? They learn different. We all come from different places. And so when you talk about building an inclusive classroom, it's really about the teacher, the school, and the attitude around what they want to do, right? And if you want to have an inclusive environment, then you need to make the change, right? To make sure that you're having a classroom that has universal design, that it's a place for everyone to come in, and it's a place that's going to be better for everyone to learn. And so, you know, when I talk to people around our community about how they include individuals with disabilities in their classroom, the same way as you would include any student in your classroom. It's about you making the change as a teacher, a principal, a community, to make sure that in the classroom you're differentiating what you are teaching to all your children in the classroom, and that you're creating an environment that is going to be accessible to all. So, you know, for instance, I recently at the beginning of the school year, we are working with Chicagoland Jewish Day School to have some students that are fully inclusive in their school. And they asked the question about, well, what are we going to do to make sure that we can support this child in the classroom? What could we do to help the environment in the classroom? And I said, well, why don't we look at making your classroom inclusive for everyone and available for everyone to learn in the same way? And we sat there and we looked at the classroom, and talking to the teacher, I remember her saying, oh, I know I'm having this student come in and this would be very beneficial for them. Oh, I have this student coming in and this would be really beneficial for them. And so we built a classroom that was inclusive for everyone, so everyone can learn. And, you know, I often get the question also, well, what do you do if a child is not able to learn the same way or the same curriculum? And I always answer, it's okay that they're doing something different than their peers are doing in a different way, just like a child who may have a difficulty sitting in their chair, right? It's okay to say, it's all right to walk around the room, or it's okay for this child to do this. And, you know, I will get the question of what happens when a child's misbehaving. Well, I'll usually say, well, it's the teacher who probably needs to change what they're doing, not necessarily the child, because if we change the behavior of how we're teaching and how we're offering assistance to that child, then we're able to change the behaviors. And it's okay, we're all different. So you're not going to get a classroom full of kids that are going to learn in the same way. And so any child with any disability should be able to come in any classroom, and we should be able to teach them. I say that it's an attitude change, right? I will often have teachers say, well, I don't know if this child's learning or not, or if it's going to be beneficial for this child to be in the classroom. And I will say, it is. It's the attitude you have to have that everyone's going to learn something. You know, one child may learn to wait in line, and the next child may be learning to read a book. And so making sure that we're having an inclusive environment and building it is something that is really, really important. And, you know, I will also say, as we are standing around here and we're listening to all these amazing, wonderful people up here, I think it's also really important to hear the voices of our individuals with disabilities, and we can learn a lot from them. I know that I have learned a lot from my past students who have taught me different ways that I needed to teach, and also I think, you know, I've had the experience of being in our inclusive settings in our day schools at Solomon Schechter, at Ida Crown, at YTT, JDBY, that we have also changed the assumptions of some of the teachers, of some of the students, and they have learned from us, and they're going to carry that over. And so it really is about the impact. But I will leave you on one thing that will just say all of what I just said. Inclusion is not bringing people into what already exists. It is making a space, a better space for everyone.
Should have had you go last. I think that kind of sums up why we're here. Okay. Fiona from Yahalom is going to talk to us now, and she's going to answer the question, how can you support a parent of a child with a disability? What to say, what not to say.
There are just a few more things I can say that everyone hasn't already said. But one of the things is, we've been talking about children and how they're not defined by their disability. And the same thing, a parent is not defined by having sorry, can everyone hear me? A parent is not defined as by having a child with a disability. There's so much more to a parent than just having that child. So that being said, though, a parent of a child with special needs, just as any other family who might have a challenge, there are times that they do need support. And here I'm just going to share a few ideas. So all of us have been in a situation where we wish we could turn back the clock or sink into the floor because we're all very good people and we never want to hurt anyone. And sometimes when we're faced with a person with a challenge, we find it in ourselves that we have to say something. We just have to say something to show them that we care, even though sometimes we shouldn't. So part of my topic is what to say and what not to say. So here are a few what not to says from my perspective as being a parent of an individual with a disability and also working with Yahalom and speaking to many other parents. So here's, and I will just say that all of these things that are said are definitely coming from the goodness of people's hearts. So this is not a criticism, it's just some advice. So here's a common comment that many parents mention is difficult when people say to them, you must be really, really special because God gives special children to special parents. So of course we know and we work on the belief that God is the one who gave us our package, but we're just ordinary people and sometimes we sort of wish God did not choose us. And it might be hard to hear that. Furthermore, taking care of our child and doing whatever is necessary for them is not really what special people do. It's just what parents do. Here's another comment that's often said to parents, also only with good intentions, is, I could never do what you do. So please know that we would never have ever thought that we could do what we're doing. And just because we are doing it, it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that we would choose it. And it doesn't mean we feel really good and that we're satisfied and that we're thinking the best that we can do. So it's meant as a compliment, but it could bring up a lot of difficult emotions for a parent. So here's a conversation, an example to try and stay away from. As a parent, we often hear something like the following: my friend's cousin's neighbor had a child with this condition, and they tried this, and their child is now cured, so you should really do that. So again, this is coming from the goodness of a person's heart, and as I mentioned earlier, just a desire to help, because we feel so helpless when we see our friends and our neighbors in pain. But the better thing to say could be, my friend's cousin's neighbor has this condition. Would you like me to get you their contact information? Sorry. Don't offer unsolicited advice. Instead, ask questions such as, I read something today that made me think of you as a parent. I don't know if it would be helpful, but would you like me to share it? In addition, on the flip side, if you know someone who is struggling, who has a child struggling in the same area as your friend, ask the parent if they would be willing to help another family. In most cases, we would be happy to, and we love the opportunity to be able to give to someone else. So those were some of the do not says. Now, here are some things that could be helpful. Most parents want you to be honest with them, and I'll share a personal example with you. A number of years ago, my husband and I were asked by the rabbi of our shul to come in and talk to him, so we were really nervous. Apparently, someone had complained to him that our son had done something that he shouldn't have done. So we said to the rabbi, please tell anyone in this shul if they notice anything, tell us so we know. It was an easy behavior to change, to redirect, and a parent can often redirect that behavior, but only if we know about it. If we don't know about it, the behavior can escalate unnecessarily, and with this particular situation, maybe my son wouldn't have been able to go to shul anymore. And for anyone who knows him, shul is his favorite place. So that would have been really, really difficult. So trying to protect us, again, comes from a really good place, but it's doing a disservice, particularly when it comes to our child's safety or the safety of other people. If you're a neighbor or a friend, ask the parent if there's anything in particular you can do to help. Depending on the parent's situation and your relationship with them, it could be picking up groceries to watching the kids so the parents can take a quick shower. And I use the shower example is because when my son was little, I had a neighbor, and I literally would call her and say, I need to take a shower. I'd like to take a shower. And she would send one of her kids over. I could take a shower, and to this day, and it's been about 10 years, it's one of the most meaningful things that someone ever did for me. One of the most supportive and embracing feelings for a parent is when they feel that their child is accepted and valued for who they are. So notice our children. A lot of people don't directly acknowledge our children, whether they're a child or whether the disabled person is an adult. Sure, a child might take an extra minute to respond or not seem to understand, and there are kids who are not verbal, but everyone appreciates being spoken to directly. If you can look beyond a disability and into the heart and soul of a child in order to know them as an individual and what they like, it's extremely important to parents of children with special needs. A final thought is please try and not be judgmental. Sometimes our kids with special needs might exhibit extremely difficult behaviors in public. Trust me, no one wants them to stop more than the parent. So if you can, lend a hand. If you can't lend a hand, please try not stare, and please try and have your children not stare as well. And please be aware that there's so many factors taken into consideration in regard to any decision we make about our child. Things might seem different to you, strange, or even wrong, but please know that we don't take any of our decisions lightly. Thank you.
No.
Okay. So in a similar vein, but not the exact same, we have Rebecca Bassman, who's going to talk about, what is it like raising a child with a disability in this community specifically? What responses has she gotten? What responses are or are not helpful? We're going to hear more about her story.
I'm just going to rip this out.
Come on up.
Okay, so there's really not much for me to say after that. Thanks, Fiona. I do want to say that, first of all, I've only lived in Chicago. We don't have family here. So when Sarah was born, like I said, she was my firstborn. She was our welcome to parenthood. You have a disabled child with hoses and vents and tubes coming all over, and Chicago became our family. So that said, I have nothing but love and gratitude for everybody here and for everybody. Rabbi Schachter is not here, but he was with us from the start, and I'm just so grateful. I want to say that, similar to what Fiona and everyone else said, that our children just want to be loved and accepted for who they are. Sarah's my firstborn, but I have 6 other typical developing children, each with other challenges that are not visible, but parenting is hard. Parenting is really hard. You can go at 16 and get a license and drive a vehicle. But when you're like in your 20s and you have a child, especially one with challenges, there's no road map, there's no book, there's no guide, there's absolutely nothing, and we need each other to get through it. And I'm so grateful for the people in Chicago who really stepped up to be our family. But that said, we're always working on accepting this challenge from Hashem with love and with gratitude and with acceptance. So similar to what Fiona was saying about you don't know what's gone on during the day, how much planning goes into a family vacation. And if any mother has gone on a vacation with any children, we know how we come back feeling so relaxed and refreshed, don't we? So we just got back from Thursday and getting the looks that we get in the restaurants, and we went kayaking, and how I had to like drag Sarah into this little kayak. I literally thought these guys were going to call DCFS on us. And I'm like, no, it's fine. She'll be happy when she's in the boat. And they're like, are you sure? We're like, yeah. That's part of it. But not even like our Airbnb, I had to leave a review because there were like steps up and down that weren't noted when we were looking for a place to stay. And I had to say the place was great, except for you didn't tell us that there was going to be a step down to the living room, a step up to the kitchen, and my daughter struggles with mobility issues. I can't just go willy-nilly anywhere, stay anywhere. There's a lot of planning, a lot of orchestration, a lot of, dare I say, anxiety or stress involved with a relaxing, fun family vacation. I also want to say, what we were talking about, the honesty and the no judgments. I got a phone call the other day from a friend. She was an acquaintance, now she's a dear friend. She said that she was driving down Jarvis and she saw my daughter sitting in the window, and my daughter likes to play with a Barbie. She likes to hold things in her hands for sensory. She said her daughter saw Sarah in the window and asked if she could give her one of her old Barbies. I mean, come on. Is there anything more like precious? Like that just sums up what this is all about. And it's usually the little kids who are asking, why does she talk like that? Or why does she look that way? And I say, that's how Hashem made her. I know we can't really understand her so well, right? I know it's hard. But guess what? She is so funny, and she loves music, and she gives the best hugs. And if we could all just tap into that and take some of that honesty, education, love, acceptance, it goes so far. It goes so far. And what I love is when my other children, my typical children, see the response from the community for her. It makes them realize, you know what? We are special in our own ways, and we all and that's all. And that's all they've ever known. She's the oldest, so that's all they've ever known. But when they start to say, "Oh, she talks like that because Hashem made her voice funny," or it's validating for me to know that she's getting that unconditional love. But I do appreciate when people ask questions, and when people when they don't pass judgment, and there is an unconditional love. I love when I go to Jewel with Sarah and everyone's like high-fiving her. It's kind of like being with like a celebrity, and everyone's like, "Hey Sarah, how's it going?" And I'm just like, that's all a mother could ask for. It's all any of us want, is just to feel loved and accepted for who we are. None of us are perfect. And on that note, I just want to share something that I came across that I think is really just a beautiful lesson. A lesson from a Moshe Rabbeinu, how, for all we know, he had a speech impairment and felt unworthy to be the great, amazing, incredible leader that he was. But the Torah teaches us that when Moshe threw down the original set of luchot from Har Sinai, when even after the letters from Hashem had gone up in the air, that every shard, every piece of those rocks were gathered up, and they were placed lovingly and held precious in the Aron HaKodesh with the whole luchot, with the whole set of the commandments. So we learn that the Torah teaches us that we don't discard things that aren't whole, that aren't perfect, that aren't. The Torah teaches us to embrace them and to hold them and to elevate them and to hold them to a higher level. They're right there with the perfect luchot right next to it. And that to me is what really, I mean, Chicago, that's really what it's done for us. They've laid us next to, they've laid us next to the perfect, which we know is not really, but they've embraced us that way, and we are tremendously grateful. I think there's still a lot of work to do, people on this panel, especially over 22, but I'm really grateful to be a part of this. So thank you very much.
Okay, I want to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists. I know you think there's some overlap in your words, and that's because there's a lot of overlap in our goals, you know? Inclusion means that everyone should be included, and we may do that for different demographics, we may do that in different ways, but the goal is one, the same way that our neshama is one and the Jewish people are one. So, thank you for your insightful answers, and now we're going to move on to some of the questions that were submitted when some people RSVP'd. They're not asked to a specific panelist, so whoever wants to take a crack at it can, and you can use the microphones that are on your tables here. So first I'm going to read the question, and then whoever wants to be brave and start the answering can. How do you differentiate disability from someone who just has a challenge, such as with school? How do we create an environment of empathy and acceptance in kids and adults and teachers when kids are displaying unpopular behaviors that their peers at times find annoying and disruptive? And how do we begin to change the way schools are typically run, with frontal teaching and little training or effort being made to work with neurodiverse kids in the standard schools?
Well, I will say it doesn't matter if they have a disability or a difference. We should treat everyone the same way, that everyone has different needs. And so you need to look at the individual, right? And be able to find out what is the best way we can tap into this child and help them succeed and be successful. Everyone wants to feel successful. So what can you do to change how you're directing a lesson, or how you're talking to this child, or how you actually react to this child in the classroom? I think we often have a vision in our head that there's right and wrong, and when we see wrong, that we're trying to call it out. Instead, we see wrong, and we should see ways that we can tap into making it better. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to say about that, but it doesn't matter if they have a disability or a challenge. Everyone has a different way of learning and doing things. We have to teach the schools that. Yes, and as I said before, it's the attitude, right? It's easy to have an inclusive classroom. It's not a difficult thing to do. If you build something around universal design where it's going to be beneficial for everyone, right? I always give an example of, it's a snowy day outside, right? And there is steps that need to be shoveled and a ramp that needs to be shoveled so kids can come into a school. And you see a janitor who is shoveling the steps. Well, instead of shoveling the ramp, where everyone can use the ramp to get in. So how do you think about that in the classroom? And, I think when you said you have to change what people think and attitudes, right? I think there isn't a choice. Teachers shouldn't have a choice to say, I want this kid in my classroom or not, or they're disruptive, right? We have to build a community that says we're here for everyone, and how can we work together to make sure that we are tapping into each of our children's specialness, right? As I say, I call my own children very special, right? Everyone's very special. Everyone has a different way that they need to take things in, or how they need to act. And so, when you have a child who's acting out, is it the child acting out because they're just trying to get attention, or is it the child's acting out because we're not really looking at what they need at that time? Sometimes you observe in a classroom and they're like, did you see that child got up 15 times? And I was like, yeah, and you directed that child 15 times instead of saying, what would be better for this child? Can they walk around, and can they learn while they're walking around? Can there be other things that we can give them that they can do? Some children finish things quickly, right? And if they're done with it quickly, what can we give them extra so that they can actually feel the success and not feel like it's bad because they're done and they're getting up and walking around? So it is about attitude. You have to make the choice.
I would just like to add, this is something that REACH is really working on. We're, like, in a lot of the schools, really working on the education piece, and to also have some kindness and empathy for the teachers and the schools that really also are doing things that they weren't trained to do and don't know how to do. I went to school in the 80s. Everyone had to follow the rules, and there was no change. And, in terms of understanding things, and, that's how life. Some of them are still teaching, and it's a learning journey for all of us. I think that we have a lot more understanding of the world nowadays about these hidden disabilities and about what kids can and cannot do and how to run classrooms. And change takes time. So when you don't see it, don't assume that it's not being worked on, but let's all try together and to reinforce, to support the schools and say, we know it might be challenging, but it's worth it. We want those kids there. We know there might be someone that's, being a little disruptive in the classroom, and we want them in the classroom. We want our kids to learn how to deal with them. These kids, they're gonna be our community, they're our future, they're our present. We want them here. We want them in shul, we want them in school. So just do our best to support the process and keep it going, and also know that it is very hard for the teachers. They're trying, but it's still hard for them.
And I also want to say, don't ever stop advocating for your child. And the schools are struggling right now. I'm a third grade teacher at YTT, so I struggle in my classroom with 27 boys alone. But I do try to have open and honest communication with my parents. But I will say that as a parent, the best thing you can do is continue to advocate. If you're waiting for a neuropsych eval, or you're waiting for any kind of assistance, OT, whatever it is, just keep pushing, just keep calling. Sometimes they'll give you an earlier slot just so that you don't have to keep talking to you anymore. But in general, as a parent, never stop advocating for your child.
Okay, we have another question was submitted. How can we be accommodating and empathetic without coming off as insensitive?
I think people just really don't know, and people don't ask questions. And I think that, as Rebecca said, you have to advocate, and it's a shame that you do, but you do have to advocate because, the squeaky wheel gets things done. That's just the way of the world. Unfortunately, it's really what it is. And I think it's the same thing. I think people don't mean to be ill-intended. They just don't know. And you just have to ask and be role models and show for other people. I really think that that's just what it is. And again, people are afraid. People are afraid because they don't know. As the teachers don't know, teachers haven't been educated, right? It's a different world now, and we have all this inclusion and all this belonging, and what is it? And it used to not be like that, right? 20, 30 years ago, this didn't happen. There were separate schools, and people had their kids living in other places. They weren't in the community. So this is a relatively new concept, and for all of us, we're living it. You're all here because you want to learn, because it's your life, because it's our profession, because we believe in it. But there are a lot of people that just aren't entrenched in this right now. And so we need to educate, and support. And you don't learn if you don't ask.
I also think just in general there is a lack of sensitivity, and I don't think it's ill-meaning like Fiona said, but there are ways just in general that we need to take care of each other. Always, what was it? Who said that? Just be kind. You're never going to lose out by just being nice, or if you have questions or you want to be supportive and you want to be kind. You want to be supportive. You're never going to miss out by saying it in a nice way. And you're just in general, just talking to anybody, a little thank you or a please goes a really long way. I think in general, I think there is an issue with the lack of sensitivity toward each other. I think that's part of why we're still in Gullahs, honestly. I think we all just need to be more kind to each other. Okay, I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay, we want to give you guys a chance to have your burning questions answered. So anyone in the audience has a question, you can raise your hand. You can I'll call on you, you can vocalize it, and then I'm going to repeat it to make sure everyone hears. Michelle? Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think we've heard the word inclusion a lot, but we haven't heard the word exposure. It is something that I've talked to people about, meaning that, how do kids, get good at anything? And who was talking about modeling? Debbie was talking about modeling. by practice. We talk about how kids with disabilities get better at socializing and making friends and having conversations by practicing. And you're saying if you want to know how people with disabilities feel, then talk to someone with a disability and make sure that kids are hearing from people with disabilities and make sure that that's not something foreign to them. Is that correct?
Yeah, and when we talk about helping, people with disabilities, sometimes we have a tendency to refer to it's a mitzvah or it's a chesed. I'm not a good mitzvah. And, I think people, if you expose children to disabilities, people with disabilities and what they're doing, then they normalize disability.
An example of that is really in our camp programs, right, where our campers have, for 30 years, right, been fully inclusive into camp groups. And, thinking of an experience that just happened a couple of years ago was a camper up at Camp Shy who had gone since he was probably 5 at Apache Day Camp and then was at overnight camp with the same peers, and it was time for them to be staff in training. And this camper, typically at that age, we had our 16, 17-year-olds go to our Avodah program, our work program, and there was a group of 90 campers that said they would not be staff in training up at camp unless this camper that they grew up with can also join with them. And we were shocked, right? We got letters. I got letters. Camp Shy directors got letters, right? And so we have now created a community, right, of people around them who are advocating for their peers, and that's because they had exposure to that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's another good word, is representation. We need to make sure that people are represented. It's important that people see people who look like them, and that makes them feel normal and appreciated and valued. Thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for your response, Jen. Any questions? Yeah. Chava. I don't know everyone's name, sorry. I'm 2 for 2, but.
First of all, when I think we want to play with them, how do we include them socially?
So wait, I want to reiterate before we start. How do we facilitate inclusion if the kids aren't necessarily leading the way? Maybe.
So it's definitely easier when they're younger, right? Because we do it for our children. It's easier, and as people get older, it's a lot harder, right? I had children, so I was talking about children, school-age children. but I will say, I think it's commonalities. So I don't know, I'm just using your son as an example, and I don't know him, but it's the Lego example, right? If he likes Legos, then you sign him up for a Lego club, and they have a commonality. People don't have to talk to each other. They're doing the same thing. It's kind of like parallel play when kids are little, and believe me, it sounds easy. I know it sounds easy, but I think it's finding commonalities, and that's what attracts us all to each other, and that's what the rabbi was speaking about when we first started, right? I mean, we gravitate towards people who are like us, and it's finding something that works for your son. So he might, he might have some behaviors that, aren't so well received, but if he's able to engage in something, if it's one thing, one time a week for 10 minutes, it's a start, right? And believe me, I know I'm saying this and it sounds easy, but that's what brings people together is commonalities. That's what we all like about each other.
The other thing I just want to add is some kids need structure in their play. So sometimes we think, oh, let's just invite some kids over, and now I don't need to worry about those kids because they're going to play together for 2 hours. And a lot of kids are not like that. So sometimes if you could organize some kind of structured activity where they're going to do something or go watch something together, that will help at least start. And another thing I always like to remind people is for some reason when you're in mandatory schooling, K through 12, you're kind of limited to the kids in your grade socially. But once you're done with school, your whole social world expands beyond that age, and people find each other. So I don't know if there's so many opportunities. Sometimes if they do have like activities that they can go to that's a range of ages, like a science club or things like that, that can be helpful, but also to know they're developing their self, and then when they're older, there might even be more social opportunities to find people that they'll connect with better.
Oh no, I was just gonna say maybe if he's like signed up for a sport, and then at school they can find a commonality with with sports. I don't know where your son goes to school, but and the other thing was maybe you'd want to be able to if you invite the entire family over for a meal for Shabbat, then maybe or Shabbos, then you'd be able to maybe facilitate it that way, where you'd have a friend, or he would see that your son has Legos and has other interests and is a wonderful person besides whatever he sees in the classroom.
Yeah, and I have a little different of a take on this also. So it starts young, right? We talked about this. So there has to be an educational piece from the beginning, right? In preschool, right? What does it mean to accept people for who they are? Disability awareness is something that is truly important and needs to be taught, right? And so it has to be in the curriculum in school, right? Every grade. It shouldn't just be said, just because you have a kid in your class, that you're doing a disability awareness on this kid, right? And it's something we learned along the way, because we used to do disability awareness only to campers, right, that had a group with a kid with a disability in their group. And then we said, well, that's not creating a community of belonging. That's not teaching empathy. It's not really teaching what a community should be learning about differences and who people are. And so if you start from a young age, kids that have classrooms that have kids with disabilities and not, you're starting to teach really what does it mean to be a friend? What does it mean to have empathy? What does it mean, yes, you may be frustrated with someone in your classroom that may be blurting out or that has a behavior or doesn't understand things. How do you accept that child? And what do you do to make sure that we're teaching our kids to accept them, but also include them in the conversation? So disability awareness has to start from a young age, so that when they do have a child in their classroom with a disability, that it is just the norm and they've learned about what it means to be empathetic. They can be annoyed, right? Like we always say, you don't have to love everyone, but you do need to be kind to everyone and be empathetic. You gotta teach it.
Yeah.
How old? I agree.
Yeah, and remembering, like, Chava shared about her son, people with disabilities have their own personality. Two people could have the same diagnosis, and they could have very different feelings about how they want to be supported, whether or not they want people to know. Ask questions. I think it goes back to ask questions. Ask people how they want to best be supported and how they best feel supported. Other questions?
I wanted to ask more information about friendship circle, what ages and what sort of, I also have a son who may not want he wouldn't want to be picked out to know. If you were in his class you would know, but if you just saw him on the street or something you might not know, and he doesn't want to necessarily be categorized as that. So just trying to figure out when we look into different opportunities in the community, should I ask for a tribal class, or because I don't want to sign up for something a disaster, because maybe he needs more support or whatever, and new things could be hard. So I just wanted to sort of get a read. I'll stop there.
Okay.
The question is,
Yeah, you can repeat it.
The question is specifically for Friendship Circle. One of the in group programs, I understand how because the child does not want other people to know, or he finds it difficult, you have that issue. One of the Friendship Circle programs is called Friends at Home, where a child who has a disability is paired up with usually a teen, and in those big brother, big sister settings, there's less focus on their disability and more on the commonality and things that can be done together as a typical friendship, and that might be something that your child might be interested in.
Also, I want to say that after we finish, the panelists are going to hang around for a minute. If you want to approach a specific person and ask questions to them, ask more about the organization. And we also have materials from the organizations in the back. So if you want to take a card, you want to take a brochure to get more information about how you can be involved, how you can volunteer, how you can seek out services, how you could recommend to a friend or a neighbor, those are available for you. So you want to know if that has changed and or what can you do as a parent if you feel like it's the administration that's not being supportive.
People are much more aware and much more accommodating and inclusive than in the past. One of the things that keeps me passionate about what I do is, like I said, I went to school in the 80s. I have a very, very good friend who had a vision disability. All she needed was enlarged print. And she was forced to be in a separate program, which is like she's a lawyer. She is like nothing else, but because she needed enlarged print, she needed to be in a separate program. And I don't, I don't know who was the driving, but why, So there's definitely been more education, more understanding. We still have a ways to go. And I think that the more we do as part of a community and by expecting things from each other and being present, we'll get further, so.
I will just say what you just said is so important because it comes from the top, right? It comes from the leader, and that is who is going to set the tone, right, for the rest of the staff and the rest of the people in the schools. And I will say, things are in a much better place than they were even years ago. And I agree that every Jewish child who wants to be in a Jewish day school should be. And it's across the board. And I know it's something we're working on very closely, even with Solomon Schechter, making sure kids can come to a Jewish day school that don't necessarily need our therapeutic day school, that can come and be in an inclusive classroom with their peers. And in years past needed to be turned away. And so we're making that change, so it's happening, but it comes from the top. You're 100% right. The leader.
Parent of a youngster with a disability, I was just wondering, if we're talking about pre-school age children, what is there in the community to try to foster inclusion for not only the children, but the parents, because there kind of just seems to be a desert, and I'm finding a lot of programs on the south side, and I'm going to the south side and taking my baby there. But it would be nice to have something Jewish, or to meet other Jewish parents of babies or toddlers that have a disability.
Yeah. What is there to do in our community if you have a young child with a disability who's preschool to help alleviate isolation, to help generate connection and understanding and build more of a community that you feel a part of?
So Yahalom, hi. Yahalom started, about a year ago, and one of our main goals is to form a community of support. So it goes beyond just some of the things that I mentioned, what doctor to take your child to, or what do you do when your child turns 22 and there's no day program that they can go to, and what do you do when your child turns 18, or you need a doctor, you need a lawyer, But we're also trying to form support groups for parents who are, facing some of the challenges. So, I'm happy to talk about that more personally.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a problem. Across the board. There are no blended preschool classrooms in this community. There are none of our preschools that are really helping support individuals that come in that need support. There's one-offs. It's something that I have continuously addressed with Federation, with some of the other preschools in the area. Again, it's that ownership of wanting to be able to, have a preschooler with a disability in your classroom and open that up for other kids to have that experience. But we're one of the few cities actually across the country that don't have some type of support in preschool classrooms or blended classrooms. Nowhere in the city. Our public schools do.
I just want to add that as a parent, mom to mom, I feel like this. I feel like I can really speak for so many moms that if you just pick up a phone and call us and just want to vent or talk or just schmooze or not talk about our kids and just talk about the weather, whatever it is, there are plenty of moms who are so willing and happy to receive that phone call. I think I don't know if we have like a phone directory of special needs mothers in Chicago, but I feel that definitely there's so many of us that just need to connect with each other, and even if we don't have the services available yet for your child, moms need to be there to support each other all the time.
JCFS has parent groups. They have a lot of parent groups, so they're informal. They have somebody who's just kind of facilitating it, but they have parent groups to connect people.
Yeah, that's a real thing. Invisible disability can be very, very challenging. Oftentimes, if you have a child who's in a wheelchair, other children at this point in time, Baruch Hashem, understand, okay, their body works differently, but if you can't see what's going on beneath the surface, children and other adults can be very judgmental about what they think should be going on. So I think the question is, are there any support groups for parents that can maintain some anonymity, so that if your child is not necessarily comfortable, is there anything that kind of offers some familial support? Right, with a bit of an anonymity maintained.
Yahalom, is this on? Can you hear me? Yeah, so Yahalom does actually have a support group, which is for parents of children mainly who have high-functioning autism or mild disability. We're trying to meet regularly, and we have met at a person's house, and I think that everyone there, their kids are on a similar kind of level and having the same kind of issues, need the same kind of support. And, a lot of them aren't even sure if their child has that formal diagnosis. So no one's really sharing names, or it's just a group of women who are getting together. And you understand where it's at, you understand what everyone's going through, practical advice, just supportive. So we would love for you to join.
I just want to reiterate that concept of being kind. I think that especially with children that have invisible disabilities, there's a lot of blame that goes around, and a lot of blame that's implied that it's due to poor parenting, and it's really hard. So it's just be kind to each other, because a lot of times what you're seeing really is due to something that's really, really challenging, but we just can't see it.
And be kind to yourself.
Right.
And I think that's, as a mom, that's something that we always forget, is to be kind to ourselves and take care of ourselves. I should have talked about that a little bit more, because the whole topic of self-care, and it's real and it's important. Our children need us to take care of ourselves. Our families need us. So,
in relation to this question, something that Friendship Circle has been involved with, and many of the other organizations sitting here, is inclusive programs that incorporate both people with disabilities and people without disabilities in the same programs. We see more and more of that in our community, and it's a space where everyone's welcome, whether they have or don't have, whether it's visible or not visible, whatever disability it is. These programs are becoming more popular. Friendship Circle has them. I know Keshet has that, and I'm sure.
I was going to say, a lot of our peers that are attending some of our programs, our buddy programs, whatever they may be, are also kids who do have disabilities themselves. And what's so nice is that it's just one community together. And I can't explain it, but it is something that benefits everyone there. So, yeah. It's true.
Your question does speak to a deeper question. And I was that child who was a visually impaired student, didn't want anybody to know about my disability, I thought I wasn't. But the question becomes, why do any of our children feel that they need to keep it a secret?
Yes.
I mean, I expect
I feel that shame.
Right,
Yeah.
they feel ashamed, they feel
And my
embarrassed, they
parents
feel
feel shame.
different. Huh?
And why do parents get shamed?
Well, but because you don't necessarily feel accepted or understood, right? So if we can change people's assumptions early on and even later, perhaps we create a culture where disability is just considered a normal part of the human experience, and our children who are disabled, who can't pass, as we say, won't feel that they have to maybe one day.
Okay, Michelle, you're hired. Are there any other final questions before we wrap it up and you guys can schmooze and you can take some swag and you can walk away knowing some steps that you can take to help make Chicagoland more inclusive? Okay, well, in that case, huge round of applause to our panelists. And all of you, thank you for coming. Thank you for making the time. Thank you for making the space. We want to have more of these conversations because, as we have established, we've come a long way, Baruch Hashem, but there's still a lot of work to do. So, as I said, if you want to approach one of our panelists, you're welcome to do so. Grab some swag, grab some food, and Shavua Tov.